So hi, I'm Deanna Fierman. We're given a story about relationships that will fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. But as you know, our stories often diverge from this. Now, I'm not here to tell you that any one story is better than another, but I am here to tell you about an alternative story, consensual non-monogamy. So when I talk about this, sometimes people say, hey, how do you know something about this? So I want to introduce myself. I'm Deanna. I work as a psychotherapist with people who are consensually non-monogamous, and I also identify as poly. So let's do a thought exercise. Imagine that you're walking down the street and you run into an old friend. Is it okay to go up to them and shake their hand? How about give them a hug, like you just did? How about a kiss on the cheek? On the lips? A long kiss? Is it okay to make out with them? How about snuggle, have sex? I ask you to do this exercise in order to recognize that your comfort level lies along a continuum, just like your partner's does. The point is that it's not black or white, monogamy or polyamory. There are shades of monogamy as well as shades of polyamory. So as you might imagine, the terminology around this can be a little bit complex. Oftentimes, open relationships tends to include most kinds of consensual non-monogamy. Open relationships can be emotionally open, sexually open, or both. Polyamory is actually kind of a subset of open relationships and mostly focuses on romantic and emotional aspects of the relationship, literally meaning many loves. Note that polyamory doesn't necessarily have to include sex, although it oftentimes does. Also, you might imagine that relationship structures can be pretty complicated. So people who practice poly can practice individually. They can practice as a couple, as a V, as a group, and in many more complicated configurations. So how many people practice polyamory and open relationships? That's a complicated question, largely because of the terminology factor. People oftentimes don't identify as being in a consensually non-monogamous relationship, and so therefore they aren't necessarily included in counts. But roughly speaking, perhaps maybe 4% of the people in the US, adults in the US, tend to do this. So that'd be about 40 people in this room today. As you might imagine, consent is incredibly important in open relationships. And I want to say that again, consent, consent, consent. If you lie, if you cheat, if you mislead, then you're not being honest and your partner doesn't know, can't knowingly consent to the relationship. If you and I are in a relationship and you say, hey, Deanna, I think I want to go and get involved with this person, then I'm empowered to decide for myself what I am and I'm not comfortable with. Poly relationships are notorious for their emphasis on communication. However, I would say that in monogamous relationships, communication is just as important. The key, whether you're communicating within a relationship or across relationships, it's actually very similar, the key difference being the amount. People are oftentimes concerned in open relationships about limited resources, so that'd be limited time, energy, or money. But what about love? Poly people would challenge you to think carefully about that. A common example is that a parent might have limited time, energy, or money, but have enough love for all their children. Another common example is having multiple intimate friendships. So, how are romantic relationships different? Another thing that people oftentimes tell me when they come in is they say, oh, I can never do polyamory because I'm too jealous. In our culture, we see jealousy as this unconquerable, towering, scary monster. But if you take away the mystery of it, it becomes much more manageable. You can oftentimes learn to tolerate it in the same way that you learn to tolerate fear or anger or sadness. You can learn tools to manage jealousy. That said, yes, it's a lot of work, but I would say it's good work to do regardless of what relationship you're in. Another thing people say is, oh, I couldn't do it, it'd be a lot of work. Yes and no. Yes, because you're not given a story, a narrative about this. You have to make it up as you go. But no, because you're given the freedom to decide for yourself what arrangement works best for you. And food for thought, what do we mean by success? If you can separate success from the narrative that we've been given, then we may be much more likely to achieve it, whether you're monogamous or not. So in the end, if you're interested in doing this, I would say recognize that it takes practice. If you want to do this, do your research. Find a community, maybe see a savvy therapist. But in the end, choose it or don't choose it, it's completely up to you. But just please be conscious in your choice. This is our happily ever after, remaining open to growth and to change wherever it may lead. So what's your choice? Thank you.